What's going on, APUSH people? We have Key Concept 6.2 for you today. This is the revised edition, the most up-to-date version you will find of the new APUSH curriculum. Before we begin, it is shout-out time. I'd like to give shout-outs to Abe and Mr. Sam, Mr. Rush's class, Mrs. Baker's class in Massachusetts, and Captain Crutchley's class at Northeast High. Best of luck. Thank you all so much for watching. You will do great on the exam in May. All right, let's take a look at Key Concept 6.2. It states, the migrations that accompanied industrialization transformed both urban and rural areas of the United States and caused dramatic social and cultural challenges. Some big idea questions that you should be able to answer by the end of this video are, why were individuals attracted to cities, and what opportunities were there in cities? How did the federal government encourage westward expansion, and what were the impacts of this expansion on natives? And how did immigrants adapt to life in America? All right, let's take a look at Roman numeral 1. It states international and internal migration increased urban populations and fostered. That word fostered means to encourage the growth of a new urban culture. So cities see tremendous growth in the late 19th century, and it's because that's where factories and businesses are located. We have international migrants coming to America and settling predominantly in cities. Immigrants from Asia, especially China, they're settling on the West Coast, and Chinese immigrants tended to work on railroads. Immigrants from Europe are coming predominantly from Southern and Eastern Europe during this time, and they are known as new immigrants. They're coming from places like Italy, Poland, and Russia, and there were over 10 million new immigrants between 1860 and 1890. Now we're talking about internal migrants. These are people within the United States that are moving. African Americans are moving within the South and out of the South, and many of them are moving out of the South to escape sharecropping and obtain better economic opportunities. So when we're talking about migrants, people moving, why are they moving to cities? Whether they're moving internally in the United States or internationally to the United States, they're moving to escape poverty. Again, the idea of the internal migrants from the South moving to escape sharecropping. You have religious persecution is another reason why international migrants are moving. Jews in Russia, for instance, they are fleeing to the United States because they're being persecuted. In many areas of Europe, there's limited opportunities for social mobility. And in the United States, you have this idea of rags to riches stories, which were made very popular by Horatio Alger. He was an author that wrote about people who could be born poor and then grow up and become rich. And this was a very popular idea that really was pervasive all throughout the United States in the late 19th century. So let's talk about the emergence of neighborhoods in cities, and these would be based on ethnicity, race, and class. For instance, you see places like Little Italy, or here, Chinatown in San Francisco develop, and you would see that immigrants would live near each other in little enclaves. They would provide new cultural opportunities for these immigrants. With immigration comes debates over assimilation that was a result of this international migration. So we see a rise of nativism again, not the first time in U.S. history. We have the American Protective Association, or the APA. They sought to limit immigrants and keep Catholics from holding office. You've encountered this idea before. Do you remember from period 5 what political party was formed to keep immigrants from holding political power? You know it, you little genius. It is the Know Nothing Party of the 1840s and 1850s. Now, JFK was not alive during the time of the APA in the late 19th century, but if he was, he probably would have said something like, APA, why are you hating on Catholics, bros? And he's saying that because he was Catholic. Immigrants often compromise between their own cultures and U.S. culture. And we see that second generation immigrants, they were more likely to assimilate than first generation, or the children of immigrants were more likely to assimilate. And we see in many public schools in the United States, they really only taught English. So that was another way to assimilate immigrants. Political machines begin to develop in large cities, and these would provide jobs and services for constituents, and that's a fancy word for voters. And they would provide these especially for immigrants and the poor. And we see this in Tammany Hall with this dude, Boss Tweed, and in return, these immigrants and poor were expected to vote for these politicians. I have a detailed video on political machines in the description. Make sure you check it out. Now, also during this time, we see the emergence of a distinctive middle class. This was caused by new managerial workers and factories and clerical workers. So we see brand new jobs that are opening up that are available to both males and females. Increased education opportunities. Many more colleges are developing. And consumer culture will grow during this time. You have baseball, it becomes very popular, and here is a picture of the very first baseball team, the Cincinnati Red Stockings. That's right, the Cincinnati Reds were the first professional baseball team. We also have vaudeville shows, which was a very popular form of entertainment in cities. All right, let's jump over to key concept 6.2, Roman numeral 2. Large numbers of migrants moved to the West in search of land and economic opportunity, frequently provoking competition and violent conflict. So what were some reasons for westward growth? Well, we had the Transcontinental Railroad. That was completed in 1869, built predominantly by the Irish on the East Coast and, as we know, the Chinese on the West Coast. We also have the discovery of mineral resources, specifically mines like Comstock Lode. This entire town was created around mining. Government policies such as the Homestead Act and subsidies to railroad companies encouraged westward growth. And I would definitely be familiar with these different reasons. I could see this as a multiple choice question or even a short answer question about reasons for westward growth. Okay, migrants moved to rural and boomtown areas of the West. And the reason why? Well, they're seeking independence and self-sufficiency. This idea of the safety valve theory, that no matter what, no matter how bad economic times are, you can always pack up your bags and move out west. What were some opportunities available out west? Well, building railroads, as I've mentioned, mining, farming, and ranching as well. People like Teddy Roosevelt in the 1880s pack up their bags, move out west to try to make money in ranching. So what were the impacts of this westward migrations? Well, we see the decimation of the bison or buffalo. They almost become extinct. By the way, what did the buffalo say to his son before he went off to college? Bye, son. Did you get it? Think about it. You'll get it. And we have conflict with natives and Mexican Americans over land, such as the Sand Creek Massacre in 1864, in which 133 natives were killed, mostly women and children. And another example would be Custer's Last Stand, or the Battle of Little Bighorn. So the U.S. government relations with natives, I would absolutely know this very, very important big idea, and it has been a long, long time since AP has asked an essay question about this time. Well, the U.S. often violated treaties with the natives, and they would use military force. An example is 1890 Wounded Knee, in which 300 natives were killed, again, sadly, mostly women and children. Natives were moved to reservations where they would lose their sovereignty or their ability to rule themselves. Now, in spite of all this, natives tried to preserve their culture in the face of assimilation policies, and we're going to figure out how. First, we have to know what assimilation is. An example of this is the Dawes Act. This is trying to get Native Americans to act or become American. And one way this happened was by sending Native children to boarding schools and requiring these children to only speak English. Native families were given individual plots of land where they were expected to farm as opposed to hunting that they were used to. A way to try to preserve autonomy or their own culture is the ghost dance, and this was a ceremony in which natives envisioned the return of buffalo and the elimination of whites. And this really upset a lot of Americans, and the government was ordered to stop the natives from practicing the ghost dance. And natives also sought self-sustaining economic practices such as farming, where they could provide for themselves everything they needed. All right, some test tips for multiple choice and short answer. Definitely know the reasons for westward expansion, ways immigrants adapted to life in America. What was the impact of westward expansion on natives? Absolutely know the Dawes Act. For essays, comparing reasons for and effects/experiences of immigration groups. And what was the impact of westward expansion on Native Americans? Again, I mentioned this. It has been a long time since this question has been asked on an AP exam. I would definitely be familiar with that. All right, guys, look forward to seeing you back here for Key Concept 6.3, and we'll figure out who this dude is with his sweet sideburns. Thank you guys for watching. Best of luck in May and all your tests, and have a good day.